more my family gives me a hard time, the more I don't change it.
Good morning, Madam President. We are recording. Marlon.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Water and Power Commissioners. Today is Tuesday, June 14th, 2022. This proceeding is being broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. General Counsel?
Good morning. In addition to resuming public comment in person and having in-person board meetings, we do still offer the opportunity for the time being for the public to call in and offer public comment. Members of the public wishing to do so may call area code 213-306-3065. Again, that number is area code 213-306-3065. And when prompted, enter meeting code 2484-557-6750. Again, that prompt is 2484-557-6750. Members of the public wishing to offer public comment will have 2 minutes per item and a total of 5 minutes for all items. When calling in, please state whether you are speaking on a specific agenda item or general public comment. Madam Board Secretary, I turn it over back to you for a roll call.
President McCLAIN-HILL.
Present.
Commissioner BARAD Hopkins.
Present.
Commissioner LEHRER. Absent. Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Present.
Commissioner Ruiz, absent. 3 board members present and a quorum. President McCLAIN-HILL.
Thank you. I'd like to begin with the opening remarks today, recognizing Pride Month in Los Angeles. It is once again Pride Month, a time to celebrate free and authentic love, to highlight our support for the LGBTQIA+ community as allies, and to listen so that we can learn and appreciate resilience, strength, and pride. Often when we talk about Pride Month, we envision the bright rainbow colors representing the community's loud and proud declaration of "This is who I am." To me, as an ally, it embodies joy, spirit, and most especially fortitude. A community's declaration of a decision to rise above a painful, not so colorful history and experience in the name of love and authenticity. Over the course of our nation's history, sadly, members of the LGBTQIA+ community have been considered taboo, rendering them shameful and unseen. But as any light and love that cannot be dimmed, their spirit persisted, and the Stonewall riots of 1969 are considered a watershed moment for gay liberation and LGBT rights. In one of his speeches, former President Obama acknowledged Stonewall and the struggle for gay rights as part of our nation's journey toward the expansion of civil rights for all. Just as women and African Americans stood up for their right to vote, among many other things, the gay community took a stand during a police raid of gay bars and clubs in New York, including Stonewall Inn, to exercise their right to simply be. And this common courage demonstrated by many who were marginalized, discriminated against, and ostracized is what makes our country, our city, and our department the great diverse place that it is. And while we've come far since the 1960s, we must not forget that there is work to be done. Many may still not fully understand and appreciate the pain and struggles of the gay community, but we will continue to stand with you and show everyone your importance to us and the city of Los Angeles. I want to offer a shout out to the many DWP employees who yesterday participated for the first time in the city's formal Pride Parade. And also to note, because we often think of these things as so far away from us, as the discrimination and the obstacles to being fully expressed as something distant and in the long past. The city of Los Angeles has the distinction of having permitted the very first gay pride festival in the world in 1970. When the organizers, Christopher Street West, went to secure that permit at the police commission, there were a number of restrictions associated with the permit, including the restriction or the requirement that they offer a $1 million bond associated with the permit, that they ensure that at least 5,000 people participated, and that that the bond was, frankly, to ensure against the potential of things being thrown at the participants and property damage occurring as a result of their marching. This is what our police commission did in a 4-to-1 vote in 1970. It took an action by the ACLU to have those conditions eliminated. So they were ultimately permitted to march with a $1,500 bond and without restrictions as to the size. In 1970, 2,000 people showed up for the first Pride Festival. We stand here today looking at what is a marvelous, joyous event that has proliferated across the country and around the world. But it was only 1970 that it was something that was frightening and controversial and difficult. I say that so that we remember and that we know that the past isn't that far removed, that misunderstanding and bigotry happens everywhere, including right here. And to also say and to point out that allyship is so critically important, especially now, with so many threats and so much fear and so much backsliding. So again, sorry for that diatribe, but during Pride Month, I do encourage everyone to learn more about the LGBTQI plus community so that we can all better understand how to show our love and support. As we do every day, I join the board and the department in proudly standing behind our employees for whom Pride Month means the most. I'm so sorry I missed the parade yesterday. I promise to be part of the department's contingent next year. We celebrate everyone's dedication to our city, and particularly those employees who identify as LGBTQIA+, their dedication to our city, and all that they do for our customers in the department. So with that, I will move to general public comment.
There are no in-person public commenters. We will take public comment by phone. Good morning, callers. Please state your full name and agenda item number you will comment on. Please also be mindful that you will have 2 minutes for comment. Allison Weber, you may begin.
Hello. Hello, my name is Allison Weber, and I am here representing the Keep Long Valley Green Coalition, a diverse coalition of ranchers, environmentalists, and tribal representatives from the Eastern Sierra. We are aware here in the Eastern Sierra that Los Angeles and much of SoCal has had to go under great water restrictions for outdoor landscaping and general outdoor uses. However, we've been upset to see people complaining in the Los Angeles Times and whatnot of the threats that the drowning of their yards have to their homes and to their well-being. Many people have complained of trees dying, and while we hate to see that and know that many of the tips still recommend watering trees because of the shade they provide, we want our fellow Californians to realize that trees have been dying here in the Eastern Sierra for over a century due to LA's water extraction practices. Trees on the Big Pine Reserve, or Big Pine Indian Reservation, have long been dying as a result of the dropping water table from overpumping. And we believe that Los Angeles and the Eastern Sierra has to work together in order to protect these trees and protect both of our environments from experiencing these symptoms of water extraction, drought, and climate change. Here in the Eastern Sierra, LA has long put down their decisions to the Eastern Sierra, and we would like to work more in tandem. This is why we ask that LADWP listen to the voices here in the Eastern Sierra, keep Long Valley green, and listen to public comment that comes in asking for less water extraction and for binding agreements that will actually protect the water here. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more public commenters. Public comment is now closed.
Then we will move to our briefing by the General Manager.
Thank you, Madam President and Commissioners. Good morning. It's good to see everybody again in person. First, I'd like to give just a few highlights that have occurred in the last couple weeks. 2 Thursdays ago, we held a fallen worker memorial event. I think Reggie's going to put a few photographs up from that event for us. This event was a tribute and a very sober reminder to honor the lives of workers who gave their lives during the course of doing their job for the Department of Water and Power, delivering water and city to the people of Los Angeles. We, following the tragic death of Michael Lemester last fall, we recognized that our memorial in front of the building was missing, unfortunately, 3 more current names, and we updated that memorial and thought it was important to recognize all the employees who had given their all during the course of duty over the last century. And so we had an event. We had about 500 employees join us in person, another about 500 on WebEx. Our board president, along with Commissioner LEHRER, were there. IBEW business manager Gus Corona was there, along with very strong IBEW contingent, there to support members of the union who really were the ones who have fallen in the line of duty. Mayor Garcetti and Councilmember O'Farrell also spoke, and Councilmember Krikorian was there present as well to support the department. In all, we've lost 221 people whose names are on that memorial. Most of these occurred early in the department's history, and fortunately with changes in safety protocols and the advent of OSHA, that number has fallen, but is unfortunately not to 0 yet. And so our goal is that we never add another name to that memorial, but it was a very fitting event and very well attended, and I appreciate all the department staff who worked very hard to put that on, to make it a special day, to honor all of our fallen employees, and to make sure that those who lost their lives within the last 5 or 6 years, those 3 were also included and recognized as well. So, and something that I think went a long way to reminding us the importance of not only the job we do, but the hazards and the sacrifice that many have made before us. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Anselmo to discuss about our drought restrictions that went into effect on June 1st, where the department stands, and then Joe Romalo will give the board a few slides of what we're doing at outreach and how that's going as well. So, Anselmo.
Thank you, Marty. Good morning, Commissioners. Just a quick reminder that on May 25th, the City Council provided concurrence with the Mayor Garcetti's order for LADWP to implement Phase 3 of our Water Emergency Conservation Ordinance. LADWP's new outdoor irrigation restrictions are limited to 2 days a week, and that became effective June 1st, as the General Manager indicated. In addition, Metropolitan's Emergency Water Conservation Program that are put in the 6 member agencies that are impacted by the State Water Project deficiencies, their budget also started June 1st. So basically, we've been 2 weeks into this. And I can say that we're currently meeting all our targets. Right now, when it comes to demands and supplies, I will say it's probably a little too early to make any final decisions. or any conclusions, but we are meeting our targets as we speak. We are increasing also our water conservation response unit staffing to help patrol. We have gotten media ride-alongs with the water conservation response unit to help to get the enforcement message out there. And you've probably seen some of these in the news media and in the last couple of weeks. Since June 1st, there have been a total of 203 complaints that we have received. Of those, 13 warnings were issued. And of today, there's been no monetary fines that have been levied against anybody. On the communication side, I'm going to let Joe kind of get into more detail, but just kind of overall, we are continuing to communicate our new restrictions to our customers, and we have launched the process of multi-language campaigns. I think Joe has some examples of that he's going to share. We've also done some mass emails, and we're getting ready to do another one. And the watering day restrictions, you can hear them on the social media platforms, digital platforms, music streaming systems or services, and also radio advertisements. So with that, I'll stop, and I'll let Joe give you a little more detail on our communication strategy.
Thank you, Anselmo. Is this work? This is working.
Yeah.
Yes, we've been working very well with the water conservation team and water system. It's been a great partnership. This isn't the first time we've done this, but it certainly is the most severe circumstances we've faced. We have both an earned media focus right now as well as paid advertising. I'm going to walk you through those slides rather quickly right now. As you know, we held a press conference with the mayor last month on May 10th. That was really the kickoff for what was a major push in terms of working with the media to get this word out. Obviously, we're joining the efforts of MWD and every other water agency that is affected, as well as the communications from the governor and statewide on this issue, which hopefully is significantly increasing our customers' awareness. We've done our own media focus as well as our own paid media and direct communications with customers to familiarize them with the restrictions that are specific to the city of LA. We did also, in addition to that press conference, we did 2 separate press releases, really looking for every opportunity to create news hooks and get media attention. Those were on May 25th and June 1st. We also created a media toolkit to share with the media. We had lots of questions. This made it very easy to handle the numerous, really almost countless media inquiries we received, a fact sheet, frequently asked questions, and digital content assets that we were sharing with the media. Just as an example, between May 23rd and June 3rd, we had over 30 news stories that we participated in with various interviews, quotes, and information in English, Chinese, Korean, Spanish, and other languages. We've really taxed the staff within water conservation, as well as Anselmo and the rest of his team, to not only manage the operations of this, but also to be great spokespeople to encourage people to conserve and to understand the severity of it, to understand the rules and how they work within the city of LA. That coverage has been both national, local, print, radio, TV, and as I mentioned, in different languages. This is an example of some of the coverage that was picked up in Spanish, Korean, and Chinese. We have found a particular interest in the Spanish language media this time that is very significant to cover this issue and to get the word out, which I think is very helpful to our overall conservation efforts. We coordinated on very short, really turnaround, some very successful, what we used to call ride-alongs, but with COVID, we've made them walk-alongs with the Water Conservation Response Unit team members, and that was taking media to see them do their work in speaking with residents about the watering restrictions and giving people educational information and warnings. Those went over very well. We did that locally with CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox 11, KTLA 5, and Spectrum. On the paid and more direct communications with our customers, we're in the midst of spending approximately $250,000 on ads that have been running since before June 1st, just before. And then we're planning right now, and we'll be executing an additional $1 million over the coming few months of the summer season. Really focusing primarily on the ordinance changes and then tips and rebates, and we're also going to use outdoor advertising as well. You'll see some of the channels here. Our email blasts to our customers are probably the most effective way to communicate with them. I know that probably sounds obvious, but it hasn't been utilized as much as we want to, and that we have been more recently. They open our emails at a rate far exceeding, far more frequently than typical email that's received because we're their utility provider, and they're concerned when they get a message from LADWP in their email. So that's been used successfully. We put out one blast already with all of the rules, days of the week watering, and we plan another to go out in the coming days. We also have messaging that's going to be printed on every envelope that goes with our bills that's showing the days of the week watering, as well as the printed page with the bill that unfortunately too many customers don't see or don't get to on their bill, but we will be hitting every customer with that. I've also been doing a significant paid social media push. These are just some examples of the print and digital. We did full page ads in numerous periodicals, LA Times, Daily News, La Opinion, Korean and Chinese media that were ran between Memorial Day. That Sunday was a full page ad in the LA Times explaining really what's going on with the watering restrictions and how important cutting back is to our overall efforts. Also LA Business Journal, LA Sentinel, and others. In terms of radio, we've hit radio very hard in early June. We'll continue that through the rest of the month and also through the rest of the summer. These are just some examples of the outlets that we've been using, and we'll continue to evaluate and push more. We started quickly with anchor reads and went to pre-recorded ads that we're running and will continue to run. Just some examples of some of the collateral. We're working on a digital toolkit to be able to share with all the community members that want to get word out about this, and working as well with the grantees that both customer service has engaged very well with, as well as Nancy Sutley and the sustainability team to help share our information. We are working on and will have up within before the end of June digital billboards along the 110 freeway. We have some space out at LA Live on Figueroa in a variety of locations across the city. You'll see the digital assets and venues here that we'll be pushing. So we'll start to see much more significant visibility for the campaign beyond the outlets that I've already described. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I know Marty was going to continue with his report.
Yeah. Unless anybody has any questions for Joe right now while he's here.
I'd like to invite you to come, you or someone from your staff, to come to the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils and speak to the presidents of the councils and how important it is, because I went to a VICA dinner on Friday night and everybody asked about that, you know.
Sure, we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
One of the platforms we use just as well, Commissioner, is Nextdoor. So all of our communications messaging, once we get the messaging sent, we just push it out over the various channels. Obviously, attending that meeting, we'd love to do that and speak to folks and answer any questions that they have.
Yeah, that would be great if you could come in person. Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner, the type of questions being asked more of what are we doing about the drought or the communication that we're doing?
The question is, my grass is brown.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's the question and
What do I do?
the comment.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other piece I want to mention is we've given our customer service reps the FAQ as well, so that when they get calls, and we're working on the IVR messaging for them as well, because they're really our front line in answering a lot of these questions that we get about fire areas and
Yeah.
how long can I run my sprinklers if they're this type, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Thanks, Anselmo. Anything else, Anselmo?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One thing just to add on Anselmo's behalf, right before the Summit of the Americas, the mayor invited us to meet with the president of Chile and a large delegation of his cabinet to talk about our water plans for Los Angeles. And they were very happy to hear and very impressed with the plans that Anselmo's team put together in terms of how we're dealing with change of water supply and dealing with drought. They're in the middle of 13 years of drought, and also our plans for conservation and the efforts that we've made. And similarly, the week before that, Reiko and her team from Power met with a delegation from the government of Lithuania, who is so impressed with our LA 100 100 study that they are doing the LT 100 study for Lithuania, modeled very closely after ours, also engaging InRail, and sought our advice as to how to get their study off the ground correctly to make sure that they had the success that we did. So that was a very good things, a good recognition and chance for the department to engage with international partners. The rest of our report really involves our DEI staff and efforts that we're making. This past week ago yesterday, so this is the second Tuesday on the job, we added 2 new managers to our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and these folks will help us greatly advance our efforts. Robert Mateau is the Deputy Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. Robert, like to introduce yourself to the board. Thank you. Robert will be overseeing the human resources side of the house, and also will be acting in Monique's absence. She's out right now for personal reasons. She'll be returning at some point, ideally during the summer, but he'll be overseeing the organization during that time, as well as the human resources side of the house. And then Andrew Kwok. Andrew Kwok is the Assistant Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer, and he'll be heading up the DEI side of the house that's growing, particularly in the areas of the community and outreach, economic development, contractor diversity, supplier diversity issues. And so we're welcome both of you on board, and they have very strong resumes and very strong track record in these areas, and I think we'll see a lot of great advancement. Along with President McCLAIN-HILL in wishing everyone a happy Pride Month, our DEI office did a lot to support department employees in the Pride Parade that she described. We do have a few photographs real quickly from the Pride Parade. We had a number of employees that participated. Unfortunately, I was out of town, but Nancy Setley represented senior management there at the parade. I got a lot of text messages from employees just appreciating the fact that the department has, really stepped up in this area and supported them. I think that both our employee base and our customer base, we need to recognize that we represent a very diverse group of folks, and everyone plays a very important role in serving the city. And we need to appreciate people for who they are and make sure that there's no artificial barriers that stand in anyone's way. And so we were happy to be able to support the Pride Parade and look forward to doing that, as the board president said, in the years ahead. I also like to point out that Sunday is Juneteenth. We do have a celebration coming up in preparation for that. For those who may not remember, because last year was the first year we talked a lot about Juneteenth. Juneteenth celebrates June 19th, 1865, which is when the cavalry unit came to Galveston, Texas, to let everyone know that the Civil War was over and that there was no more slavery in the U.S. And I believe it was almost 2 years after the conclusion of the war when the word finally got to everybody that there was to be no more slavery in the United States. And the board president, if I may, not to follow on your diatribe as you described it, but if I may, we think of history as a long time ago. 1865 is not long ago, just as 1864 was a historic massacre in the Owens Valley involving Indian tribes. And that was only 40 years before William Mulholland secured our water rights. So we're not talking a long time back in history. This is, just over 100 years ago. So this is very important, and it's very important that we recognize and celebrate that we're making progress, but we still have much work to do, and that we recognize contributions by every group of employees that works here and continues to work here, and that we continue to do everything we can to support and celebrate each other and remove barriers to everybody. And so this Thursday, our own NSBE group, in conjunction with the DEI office, is hosting a Juneteenth celebration outside JFB. There'll be food trucks and black-owned businesses out front from 11 to 2 and a small ceremony with live entertainment. And we ask employees to take advantage during their lunch break to go out there and visit. And then also we'll have some participation in the Martin Luther King Day Parade, which was postponed due to the pandemic, which will be taking place on Monday. And so that's an important celebration. I hope everyone takes time to join us out front on Thursday and to recognize and really celebrate each other and celebrate the diversity that makes this department so strong. And with that, that's the conclusion of my report.
Thank you. We are now at item E, introduction of motions. Are there any formal or informal motions that people intend to introduce?
No.
I see none from my fellow commissioners. I do want to simply report that on our next agenda, there will be a motion that I will be sponsoring relative to creating some additional guardrails around SCAPA and our interaction with that entity. In addition,
Related to procurement or
with SCAPA,
Yeah.
related to our procurement and oversight of our engagement with SCAPA, yes. So that will be on the next agenda. And I may have another motion in response to a presentation being made today, so I'll save it until that presentation comes forward. Comments by the ratepayer advocate.
We will have some brief comments on a package of items 3 through 7. This is an annual group of adjustments made, but there's some new things because of higher inflation rates that are occurring for items 3 and 4 that will adjust the base rate component of the rates up 2% for higher inflation rates. This only reflects inflation through the second quarter of last year. I can give my brief details now, or if someone wants to pull those items, I can comment there, but we recommend they all go ahead in any case.
Would you mind providing your comments at this point?
I'd be happy to.
Great.
About 2/3 of the water rates and about half of the power rates are pass-throughs that are adjusted annually or somewhere between annually and quarterly. The base rates were set up so that after the end of the initial 5-year period for the rates, if inflation exceeded 2%, there would be an inflation adjustment of inflation minus 2% to the base rates. This came into play for the first time this year. So the base rates are going up about 2%, reflecting the inflation number for the second quarter of 2021 for the prior 2021 through the prior year, and we will probably see a similar but larger adjustment next year. And this won't show up in rates until for this year's adjustment will not show up in rates until January 1, 2024. So there's a long lag between the inflation and the adjustment in DWP rates.
And you indicate that we can anticipate seeing a similar adjustment based on what's occurring now?
Correct. Well, inflation is now in the range of 8 to 9%. Minus 2%, that means it could be 6 to 7% a year from now in the base rate, and that wouldn't show up in rates until January 1, 2025. Unless we have a rate review that changes what we're doing overall.
Okay, thank you for that. Any additional comments?
No, although Ann Santilli may want to make some additions.
Thank you, Fred. I agree with your comments. The rates won't go up. It's the base rate revenue target allows us to collect the total amount of revenue. So that's why the rate impact won't be seen until 18 months from now, till January 1st, 2024.
Okay. Any questions or comments regarding the report from the ratepayer advocate? Or comments from the ratepayer advocate? Nicole?
Yes, please, thank you. Is there any recommendation of something to do differently as a result of this delay?
We should have a rate review.
Okay, and when are we slated for our next rate review?
We're reviewing that right now, and we plan to come back to the commission within the next 6 months with a timeline.
With a timeline for the rate review?
The timeline.
Can we do it sooner than 6 months from now?
We could work on that, yes.
Okay.
I have a more flippant answer. We were scheduled to do that at the end of 2020.
Okay. Okay.
But because of the pandemic, it was not a good time.
Okay.
But would it help if Ann just briefly went through when the time comes?
Why don't we do this? Why don't we call items 3 and 4, since that's what we're speaking to, as special, and we can have a fuller discussion in the context of the agenda on those items.
Very good. Good recommendation.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be good, yeah.
So can we, do we have anything from the neighborhood council?
No community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on any of the items on today's agenda.
Okay, thank you. So then we'll move to H, which is taking up items recommended for approval. We are we're removing items 3 and 4 from the list. Are there any other items that people would like? Oh, and I think item 12 is being deferred. Are there any other items that people are interested in a presentation or discussion of? If not, I'd like to move items L1, L2, L5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, and 15 for adoption. Is there a second? Would you please call the roll?
President McCLAIN-HILL.
Aye.
Commissioner BRAD Hopkins. Aye. Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Aye.
3 ayes, motion passes.
Terrific. If we could move to management reports. One.
James Tan, Director of Internal Audit. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to present an overview of internal audit. The internal audit was established about 77 years ago through a board resolution, and through another board resolution in 1980, the board adopted a policy statement for internal audit. The policy statement affirmed the Chief Information Officer's organizational responsibility for the internal audit function. The audit policy statement also requires internal audit to follow the internal audit standards established by the Institute of Internal Auditor. That standard, has a very broad, a set of requirements regarding the independence, objectivity, and the qualification of auditors, due professional care, and also set up specific requirements for conducting, planning, reporting audit activities. The audit policy statement also stipulates the main responsibilities of internal audit, including evaluate adequacy and effectiveness of the internal controls, recommend improvements in internal controls, and ensure the compliance with the corporate policies, and the procedures, as well as applicable laws and regulations, and also determine the department assets are accounted for and safeguarded from losses of all kinds, and determine the reliability of accounting and financial data, and determine the expenditures are proper and authorized. The policy also gave the authority to the internal director of internal audit to develop, maintain a comprehensive audit program, and also gave internal audit full access to all information required to do the audit work. A little bit about audit committee. Like many other companies, LADWP internal audit administratively reporting to the CFO, and functionally reports to the Board of Audit Committee. And our Board Audit Committee is now a standing committee. In the past, it's a ad hoc committee, and now it's a standing committee that was established by the board. In the board, the current audit committee charter was adopted by the board in August 2021. And currently, the audit committee meets quarterly. One of the responsibilities of the audit committee is to review annual internal audit work plan, discuss audit reports, and follow up on the status of all major audit findings and recommendations. A little bit about the makeup of audit group. Right now, we have 19 budgeted positions, with the 16 positions occupied. And currently, internal audit has 7 certified public accountants, 1 certified internal auditor, and 1 certified information system auditor, and 1 certified fraud examiner, and 2 internal security assessors for a payment card industry data security standard. I just got a notice from my staff. One of them passed the state law, the bar examination, and license to practice law. Type of audits that we try to do. Each year we plan to perform 6 major type of audits, including contract audits, operational audits, joint project audits, and information system audits, and customer service and revenue-related audits, and financial audits. Risk assessment and annual audit planning, and the internal audit management develops annual audit plan. The audit plan is based on a formal risk analysis and input from division directors and executive managers, and past audit experience, and joint project audit requirements, and also state and city requirements. The audit planning process now is as a topic in audit committee meetings. Internal audit may perform some audits which is not listed on annual audit plan, and actually we're encouraged to do some surprise audit by the audit committee. A little bit about our general audit process for conducting particular audit. It's kind of like individual audit.
I'm sorry. I've gone through the presentation, and it's primarily descriptive, and that's terrific, and I appreciate that, and I know that we're not at questions yet, but I'm just curious, while you're continuing your presentation, if you would begin to think about, because one of my questions is, what impact has our audits unit had on the department? I'm thinking about a number of occurrences where we have been alerted to, or stumbled into, or significant issues have been highlighted and revealed, and I'm curious about the degree to which our audits have informed improvements in practices, identified actual risk or or significant problems that needed to be addressed. I'm just trying to understand, if we're doing more than simply superficial papering over of any number of, superficial confirming that everything is fine through our audits.
That's a good question. Actually, that there are several steps there, risk assessment, and a lot of audits were required by the state and the city. So those are also the project, joint project. And in addition to those, then all the other audits going to be based upon risk assessment. And then each different year, then you have a different risk, and we had a formal risk assessment before. We have a catalog of all the areas to look into. And in the past, we did have a lot of significant findings, big ones. A lot of them were actually featured in the LA Times, and that the biggest one I remember is more than $200 million issue. So we did have a lot of findings. And in the last 2-3 years, we identified about $30 million for recovery from the city service building, and also about $20 billion from a joint project. That's a real recovery. But you're not going to get all the recovery all the time. But one of the procedures that we have each time we audit, then we have exit conference with the management and get the response from management, and also secure a plan of actions. And sometimes we do a follow-up on them to make sure those actions are being taken care of. So I would say we did look into a lot of issues there, and then some of them were significant. But auditing is not a guarantee or to ensure there is no fraud here. And in the past, we were involved in a lot of fraud investigation also. That PCARD audit, audit that department identified about $5 million before. And there are also cable loss. Theft, we were involved in that also. We recovered about $3 million also. So there are a lot of things there that we participated, but it's still, we will not be able to, that's not the requirement for auditing to ensure that there is no fraud here, and that industry, that basically the internal control.
I'm actually more looking at things like review and evaluate adequacy and effectiveness of internal controls, which is, I would imagine, to me, that's a pretty, sort of foundational aspect of an audit function, audit practice, recommending improvements in internal controls, the ascertaining of the extent of compliance with corporate policies and procedures. Those to me are significant, sort of significant areas. And I am interested in the degree to which, those areas with respect to audits are things that get a deep dive. I'm asking because in my last interaction, in fact, my recent interaction with our outside auditors related to some work that they had been done, the work seemed pretty superficial. And it did not seem to me to rise to the level of determining the extent of compliance with corporate policies and procedures. I didn't see
May
that.
I interject as the chair of the audit committee?
Yes.
So I think the outside auditors are tasked with a very financially focused view of the operations and the books and records. The team that James leads in internal audits comes to the audit committee with a plan of attack for the year ahead. They're in the process of devising that for the coming year. We had actually an audit committee this morning. And, you know, even the 7 audits that had transpired since the last committee meeting that we went over today, they varied in what the results were. I wish we could say that we, as an organization, were you know, compliant with every one of our regulations and did everything as we would want it to go, but the variety of what was covered ranged from $30 million of, not of new revenue, but revenue that was found to have been just allocated incorrectly into the wrong buckets. And about 9 on that one recommendations of things that would need to be adjusted to prevent those, that 30 million as related to, that example was related, I think, to rebates. And the team, oh no, actually it was related to the water distribution team, sorry, on that one. And the water distribution team was there to then convey all the steps that they were taking to remedy those. But it went, you know, to the other end of the spectrum where we covered 2 contracts with, you know, that we have with various entities. And, you know, they did a deep dive of that contract and found they had overbilled us $4,000, I think it was, on travel. And so there was a little bit of money here and there. But so the spectrum of what they're covering is quite vast. And every year they're planning it out. They're getting feedback from the teams on what they would like to get audited. And then additionally, they're starting to implement some surprise audits. And they've found some interesting things with that as well. So the audit committee is reconstituting itself for these past 2 years. And I think it's, James and his team is doing an excellent job of both the volume and depth of content here.
So I'll have to say that perhaps my mistake was in speaking to the outside audit team as opposed to our internal audit team. It sounds like I would have gotten a more robust response from the internal audit team, so that's good to know. Okay, well then I will allow you to thank you for that, to finish your presentation.
Yeah, I think you're talking about external auditors. The external auditors, there are 2 aspects. One is we're specifically talking about our external auditor, what they call the independent accountants. They're basically, their main job is to certify our financial statements. They all their risk or what is control assessment is relating to the financial data, but the other side, they also have consulting function there. You know, I think the main strength for that group, for the external auditors, they have industry knowledge, intelligence, so that is a good for some type of performance, you know, evaluation, and to see what the industry practice it is. And for our small group, we don't have that access. So to answer your question, it's always, you know, we're thinking about doing some co-sourcing, kind of like have to get more help from the consultants in terms of guiding us to see what the major industry risk there and the type of expertise that we don't have. Because it's not realistic for us to develop internally, and no one do that. The industry, I was told that usually they set aside about 10% of the budget for external help. And we did in the past have some help from Deloitte and some other firms, and they look into some high-risk area like investment and IT security, planning, those areas. We'll never be able to do that because it doesn't make any sense for us to train our people to do those. That would be very superficial. And so it's good to have some outside help in that regard. And that's our plan we're always going to set aside. Then we have a contracting issue. We're trying to piggyback with the city. City has a group of consultants, auditors, and we're in the process trying to get that one. And then hopefully they can help us on in some areas too.
Okay.
So I basically sum up the process. One thing that I want to emphasize is we were trying to ensure the accuracy of the audit. Then we're going to engage management and make sure that they agree to our findings and recommendations. And at least the business unit directors going to be contacted and then get the input from them. These are some of the documents that we sent to the board and the city controller's office. The annual audit plan, the audit reports, and then also the monthly activity report, which is to the board. It's including the FSO monthly activity report, and in a way, it's also to the public. I have a list of the audits that we completed in this fiscal year, and that was actually submitted to the board already, and as all of them, except for joint project audits, being discussed at the audit committee meeting. I'm not going to get into some of the details of all the audits, but some items identified through the contract audits. We have wrong markup, and we have missing published prices to support the billing, and we also have travel expenditure issues, and then also we have some double billings. The amount is not significant, but those are the issues. And for the operation audits, and there's Commissioner NEEMAN BRADY already talking about some of the audits already mentioned. We have accounting issue of cash memorandum audit that there's about $30 million understating revenue and overstating liabilities. And then we have a rebate program audit. Good thing is that we didn't identify any fraud, but there are some control issues because rebate was done through the trust fund. And the trust fund usually is meant to be for small transactions, but for this rebate program, we have customer rebate and EV electric vehicle rebate. We have like $20 million processed through the trust fund each year. So the trust fund process, the check cut by the program management is not paid by accounts payable directly. So accounts payable has some kind of control for our regular payments through a three-way matching, authorization, receiving, all those things. But trust fund was kind of like delegated to the program management. So I really call them as off-system payments, like credit cards one, trust funds another one, right? And those are not directly controlled by accounts payable, they just get reimbursement. So one of the issues is the accounts payable, they make payment, they don't really review, have access to the original transaction documents. So that's one of the findings also there. Then we have bilingual payroll add-on audit. I think the major issue is, according to the city and LADWP policy, people have a bilingual premium. They're supposed to have their usage lock and then we noticed about 40% did not have that. And then we have one audit, record management program audit. There are a lot of boxes of permanent records were not returned by divisions who checked it out, and some of them were held for more than 15 years. And also the program manual has not been updated since 1994. So the last slide, that is some of the audits that in progress. So we're still working on it. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you. Any other questions?
Just one quick one related to one of the audits that is in progress. I just want to make sure I understand what it is. Yeah, customer service charges methodology. Could you just explain that briefly? It's number 5.
Number 5. Okay, we have a remittance center, when people sending the checks, right? The machine process all the payments. So that there is one group processing that, and then you have a lot of checks going to be kicked out because, either the check is not in the right format or there are some questionable payments. So that's the area that we're auditing that right now. Just the processing of the customer payment.
So I understand the methodology. I was just curious as to what it was specifically about the methodology that we were auditing, but it's the machine?
Yeah, I think that maybe that's not a really good, term there. It's a remittance center audit. We did the similar audits, at least my tenure is about 2 or 3 times before. We have issues there.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll be interested in seeing the results of that audit when complete. I don't have any other questions. Are there any questions or comments from anyone else? Jill.
I had a question about this morning's meeting, that there was a slide there that said, that was titled fraud. And it seems to me that with all the auditors sitting at the table this morning, how did this fraud, did it just slip by? Or did anyone look at it? I mean, how does that just, where does that fit in?
You mean we have a fraud reported? No,
I think that this morning's audit committee, we went through the audit plan for the next fiscal year, and KPMG mentioned that part of their audit work does include inquiries of management and others who have oversight of fraud and trying to make sure that anything that's known is addressed.
Okay.
In doing the audits, the fraud risk is always considered, but just for engagement itself and each type of audit, the nature of the activities, the risk is a little bit different. Like a rebate program, one of the concerns is whether those rebates are real, whether it's a fake transactions. So we, in our step, we did include some of the steps, by verifying and surveying the participants directly, based upon sampling, right? Mm-hmm. And there's any transaction which is kind of suspicious, right? That the data in the different system doesn't match, or there is a change of dollar, then we include them in the survey. And we don't survey, we say, well, did you receive this? But it's more in the terms of like customer service survey. And the good thing is this time we didn't get any response saying it's not real, okay? But that happened before. That happened before. We identified fraud transactions that there were many years ago. Also, it's a rebate program. We identified $2 million back.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll now go to management report number 2, which is the presentation on the strategic transmission plan.
So I would like to introduce Simon Zoto. He is our Director of Power Transmission Planning, Regulatory, and Innovation, to introduce his staff to discuss our strategic planning, transmission planning, which is a critical element to power system operations and will be critical in meeting our future goals.
Good morning, Commissioners. The subject of transmission lines has become an increasingly important subject in the utility industry, and specifically in the Western United States. Here at DWP, our transmission system plays and will continue to play an indispensable role in helping us meet our LA 100 and clean energy goals. So to that end, today's presentation will cover LADWP's new strategic transmission plan, which will be a proactive roadmap for all our potential transmission development, action of plans, as well as projects. So here to present are Pijoy Chua, the Assistant Director of the Transmission Planning, Regulatory and Innovation Division, and Dennis Obiang, LADWP's Manager of Transmission Planning. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. The purpose of today's presentation is to introduce LADWP's first ever strategic transmission plan. In this presentation, I will be covering the responsibilities of the Transmission Planning Group, LADWP's transmission planning process, its outcomes, as well as the necessity for us to strategically plan for the future in order for us to meet our clean energy goals. So the Transmission Planning Group is responsible for planning all aspects of LADWP's vast transmission system, which is over 4,000 miles, traversing 5 western states, which constitutes approximately 20% of the transmission infrastructure in California. The transmission planning process is governed by federal regulations, which is enforced by FERC, or otherwise known as the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So as you can see from this, from the screen, there are 4 specific areas that I would like to cover in order to describe the transmission planning process. So first, what is transmission planning? Transmission planning is a continuous process of assessing the state of our transmission system in order for us to make sure that we are providing electricity to our customers in a safe and reliable manner. So in other words, as part of this transmission planning process, we are constantly scanning the entire system in order for us to identify deficiencies, as well as point out necessary improvements that we need to make in order to support LADWP's future load. Now, this process is very forward-thinking, meaning that we look at our future growth in a 10-year horizon. So the key inputs that we consider here when we plan for future transmission needs are load growth, as well as any addition of renewable resources and retirement of existing generation resources, if any. Now, the outcome of this transmission planning study is delivered in a form of a report. You may have heard of it. It's called the 10-year transmission assessment. This report includes system upgrades that are recommended in order for us to meet the demands of maintaining our transmission system reliably. We publish this report on a yearly basis. So LADWP is required by FERC to develop this 10-year transmission assessment on a yearly basis, but we don't keep this plan to ourselves. We have to share the assumptions that we've made as well as the results with external stakeholders. The external stakeholders include third-party generation resources developers, our neighboring utilities, as well as anybody in the general public that is interested in LADWP's transmission plan. We also share this internal assessment. We also share this assessment with our internal stakeholders, subject matters here at LADWP, including grid operations, resource planning, as well as engineering design groups. Next, I'd like to talk about a highly technical framework that produces the 10-year plan. So this 10-year assessment starts with the development of what we call base cases. These base cases include historical load profiles as well as generation resources. From there, once we put these two together, we come up with power flow cases for each season. Here in California, we don't get snow, so we don't have to run for the snow season, but you can see that it's a complicated study to do. Once then we build these base cases, we have to analyze the scenarios by performing various contingencies. So why is it important for us to simulate these contingencies? The contingencies allow us to determine what type of system is needed to maintain reliability if and when, for example, a generation asset, a critical transmission equipment, or a transmission line fails. So in other words, to maintain the reliability of the system, the transmission planning group prescribes the necessary upgrades that provides the redundancy should something in the system fail. So the recommended upgrades can include upgrades to our overhead transmission lines, upgrades to our underground transmission cables, station equipment upgrades, or transmission line towers. So as part of the planning process, the transmission planning group determines and authorizes all transmission-related projects within LADWP. Every transmission project starts at the transmission planning group. Currently, we have 34 active transmission projects here at LADWP. Over the past few years, you may have heard of the 10 no regrets transmission projects. We do not use the term no regrets anymore. However,
well, that doesn't mean we have a lot of regrets.
those 10 projects are part of the 34 active projects at this time. So the breakdown you can see here on the screen, 16 of those projects are overhead transmission line projects. 11 of the 16 are within the Los Angeles area. 6 underground transmission cable projects, and 12 transmission equipment projects. All of these projects were originated by the transmission planning group. From there, they get reviewed by our transmission engineering groups. Once we determine constructability, we either hand off those projects to our power transmission and distribution line workers, or they are contracted out and managed by our major projects group. All of these projects are closely monitored at our LA 100 bi-weekly implementation meeting in order for us to ensure that each project receives the necessary attention and support. Now, considering the level of generation resources build-out anticipated by the LA 100 NREL study, as well as the strategic long-term resource plan to meet our 100% clean energy by 2035, it is apparent that all of those transmission projects that we are currently working on are not sufficient for us to get to 100%. Therefore, additional transmission capacity will be needed to achieve the 100% goals. That means that transmission is a big piece of the puzzle in resolving the 100% clean energy goal. LADWP is not the only one that has to resolve that piece of the puzzle. Everyone in the West is in the same predicament. The LA 100 study identified the need for additional transmission. However, it did not identify specific transmission projects in order for us to meet 100%. One of the dilemmas in transmission planning is called the chicken and the egg conundrum. So, which means what comes first? Is it transmission capacity or is it generation resource? In other words, should our resource planning depend on the availability of transmission, or should transmission investment depend on the location of the resources? So to resolve this conundrum, instead of us just looking at our existing transmission infrastructure and just being compliant with the regulatory mandated 10-year assessment, LADWP is embarking on the strategic transmission planning process, which would allow us to broadly address our transmission needs and also enable us to have the necessary transmission capacity to meet our 100% clean energy goal. So I will pause here and pass it on to Dennis Obiang, the Manager of Transmission Planning, to further discuss LADWP's strategic transmission plan.
Thank you very much, P-Joy. Good morning. My name is Dennis Obiang, Manager of Transmission Planning. P-Joy Chua just gave you a background just to introduce the strategic transmission plan, because you need to understand a little bit more the current framework we use to plan for the system today and how we're going to augment that framework to ensure that we meet the challenge of tomorrow. Meeting LA 100 is one of them. Before we talked about strategic transmission plan, I want to take a minute to explain the current state of power system today. To your right, you see a graphical representation, simple but graphical, for the purpose of this meeting. The bubble in the green represents the LADWP network transmission, local transmission. Inside that bubble, we have 4 generation, thermal generation, Harbor, Haynes, and Scattergood are the coastal generation, and Valley, inland generation. That bubble is quite limited in capacity, and normally DWP need additional resources to meet demand. We don't just depend on those internal generation. We also depend on external generation. So we have 3 major corridors to bring those resources externally to internally. So the arrow you see on top of the bubble are an attempt to explain those corridors in a graphical sense for this purpose. The first one, connecting DWP system to the north, is the Pacific DC Intertie. That corridor today, we do not have enough resource, on the other hand, to fill that corridor. That corridor is currently underutilized. The second corridor.
Wait, can I stop you there? So there are a lot of generation resources that are up there. It just means that we don't have any contracts with them.
Well, not necessarily. There is no transmission availability to connect those resources.
It's
That's
constrained.
what we're going to talk about. Yes.
There's a constraint on the Pacific intertie.
Yes.
Okay.
So the asset has capacity, but the other side, we're trying to connect to the resource, there is a missing gap.
Okay.
Second corridor, the Barren Ridge system. We call it the green system, the green corridor. That corridor is challenging because it's also shared by CAISO and SCE. And we have saturated that corridor with renewable energy resources. We are concerned that the loss of that corridor can cause an outage in DDP system and CAISO system. So there is a loss risk corridor there. The last one, the Victorville to LA system path, also known as Vic to LA path. That corridor is a major corridor in DDP system. It brings all the resources from Intermountain Power Project, Hoover Generation, Copper Mountain Solar, Apex, and on from the east inside the DDP system. Today, that corridor is saturated. There's no more room. So taking this into consideration, understanding the limit of those existing infrastructure, the question we pose ourselves, how do we augment that infrastructure? First, the existing planning that P-Joy described earlier is looking at 10-year window. Remember, building transmission at least is 12 to 15 years. So we have to expand the timing horizon so that we have broader visibility of the challenge ahead of us, so we can plan for this now and save money in the future. So we need to expand the timing horizon for the existing planning. We also need to relieve existing transmission constraints, which we face today. Expanding capacity is a big one that we have to do as well. We also need to meet anticipated load increase. First of all, I need to bring you back to the history of DDP system. DDP system has a vast transmission system as described by P-Joy earlier. Our predecessor built a robust system. But when they built that system, they were faced with load growth. The city of Los Angeles was growing. And then in the 70s, they had oil crisis where we have to diversify our resources. We expanded more resources externally. While it's true that the planning process then is similar to the planning process today, but the planning process today is much more complex, and we are faced with new challenges that they didn't face then. Well, what are those contributing factors? Why do we need the strategic plan? And what's so strategic about the plan? Presented in front of you is a bit of a description of why we need the strategic transmission plan. First, as I mentioned earlier, our predecessors were planning for resources outside of California. It was firm resources. Today's world, we have to plan for resources that are weather dependent. So when we put resource in one area, and if that area is covered by cloud, guess what? The capacity shortfall goes down, and we will scramble to meet demand. So there is a energy security risk associated with those resources we are planning for. So how do we ensure that we have sufficient footprint next around those resources such that unfavorable weather condition in one area does not jeopardize resource on the other area? So geographic diversity is key to ensure that we reliably meet system needs for the future. Second, every one of us live in California. We have experienced extreme weather conditions. The heat wave is extending. The fire is wild and wilder every year. The following year basically surpassing the preceding year. How are we going to plan a system by ignoring this? We can't. This is the reality that we live in today. That was not there yet back in the days when our predecessor planned this system. So we need more corridors to ensure that if one corridor is lost or two corridors is lost to extreme weather condition, we can still meet demand. So in doing that, we provide increased operational flexibility to our staff who have to manage that transmission system on an hourly basis. Third, P-Joy brilliantly described the conundrum of the chicken and the egg. It's a kind of uncertainty principle, but once you figure out one, you can figure out the rest. But the problem, how do you figure out the first step? So what we want to do in terms of interconnection of our regeneration resources, we're finding out that developers, including our resource planner, they are scrambling to figure out where can I put the resource because they want to know where transmission is coming. Well, this plan is trying to flip that script by showing that we will show you where we think the transmission is coming so that the resource planner, the developer, can coagulate around those planned transmission systems, thereby providing a competitive rate for a power purchase agreement because they already know where transmission is coming. So we want to be able to provide an interconnection roadmap to change that because it is a problem across the Western grid, interconnection requests, and people don't get to be able to connect the system because they're trying to figure out where would the transmission be. If we do all of those things, we can severely reduce costs and also ensure that we achieve 100% goal by 2035. Well, is DWP in a unique situation in this kind of predicament we're talking about here? The answer is no. First of all, we know where the resources are located. We know where the offshore wind is. We know where New Mexico resource winds are. We know where New Mexico solar is. We know where geothermals are located. Nevada is where we have a lot of geothermal and solar. Imperial Valley has a lot of geothermal and solar. New Mexico has a lot of wind and solar. Arizona has a lot of solar. Wyoming has a lot of wind energy. So we know where the resources are. So what we're trying to say with this resource map, how do we get to them in a way that is cheap and cost effectively? Is DWP unique in this predicament? No. CAISO also come up with their own 20-year transmission outlook. And they describe the level of transmission expansion required to meet California objective of 100% by 2045. They're talking about getting to offshore wind, Wyoming wind, New Mexico wind, and a lot of solar in between. So DWP is embarking in its own journey to develop its own 20-year outlook called the Strategic Transmission Plan. What are the framework for the Strategic Transmission Plan? The first thing we want to be able to do as part of the plan is model. What are we modeling? Remember, we're going 20 years in the future. So we're modeling scenario that describe that what kind of future we can reasonably expect to inherit. For example, do we account for, is offshore wind a viable option? Those are the things we're thinking about. How much electric vehicle we have to have in our system? Is it high? Is it low? Is it medium? Depending on the nature of the scenario, we will come up with a different transmission configuration. So it's extremely important that we get this right. This is why we collaborate with SLTRP, because they have the resources, they know what they want for the system, so we're looking at those cases and importing them into our system analysis to ensure that we are consistent. One thing we want to note is this. When we do our modeling, we take into consideration two factors, the reliability of the system and the economic factors. What is the reliability of the system? If we propose a transmission system, we want to understand to what extent that transmission system meet the reliability of the future. And second, is it economic? Meaning, if I inject a new system, how much it's going to relieve constraint in LA Basin? Those are the things we're considering. At the end of the study, we will come up with a set of solid recommendations for your consideration. Now I'm going to give you a few examples. What are the conceptual projects we've been studying so far? Before we get there, I'll share with you a map of the Western grid. Well, this is the Western grid, it's half of the United States. DWP is part of the Western grid as a regulatory requirement. In front of you, you see a lot of transmission projects developed by neighboring utilities and also developers. We believe that it's beneficial to leverage on the development of those projects because time is not on our side. DWP is moving aggressively to get to 100% by 2035. All of those utilities are marching along the same journey, but they're 10 years behind us, 2045, that's their timeline. Now,
these are the ones that are underway.
Yes. These are the one on the WEC and my team sitting with me. We are part of vetting all of those projects because we are part of WEC through regular review of the project, understanding to what extent those projects will impact the WP. All of them are out there. So they're really a way ahead of us in terms of planning aspect, development, permitting. Some of them are still not constructed yet, so we want to see to what extent it makes sense to help, to participate.
When was the last time a new transmission line was constructed in WEC?
Well, there are a lot of transmission lines that are under WEC, a path rating. We have a WEC who...
Sunrise, exactly. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, underway, does that mean under construction, or does that mean in some element of permitting or planning?
All of the above. Some of them are far along, some of them are still in a permitting process, but most of them have already secured the site, and some of them are buying land, so they have a lot of project going on. Right now, we have Transwest Express, which is connecting our IPP. We're working with them because they're connecting with us. We're still in a study mode. They already secure the right-of-ways. All of those projects, most of them have not built something yet, except for Greenlink, where the construction has started, which is in Nevada. The blue section there, they're already building it. They're already putting the resource together, but most of them are either financing or already secure a customer that will buy the right on the transmission system. So we're showing you this like it's not too late.
But my question, I kind of knew the answer when I asked it, was really just to well, there's great enthusiasm is to temper expectations, just because there has not been a major transmission line in a long time, what I consider to be a long time. But there's a lot of legislation to indicate that there would be more acceleration, and I think everyone is in agreement of the need.
Yes.
Please continue.
Now, before I get to the project that I'm going to describe, I want you to have three things in your mind. Remember, I talked about the three things that we're planning around. Geographic diversity of the resource to reduce security risk of energy concern. The second one is add more corridors to increase operational flexibility in the event we have wildfire or something happen to our system. And the third one is to provide a roadmap to interconnection customer. With that in mind, let's dive into the transmission consideration. The first project is to upgrade the existing 287 system on the Century line, but we want to extend from LA Basin in green portion pocket there all the way to Nevada, take into consideration Green Link project we discussed earlier because they're already out there trying to build it, and bring resource from solar and geothermal all the way in basin. We have a lot of asset in between. We want to see to what extent we can increase capacity in those assets, and then connect to Nevada and bring resource into LA Basin. Project number one. If successful, this one will increase capacity in LA Basin system. This one is a brand new concept.
I'm sorry, can you go back to that? Just a couple questions about that. So this is upgrading an existing corridor, yet there, I just don't understand quite the map. So the purplish new corridor ideas, what does that mean? Does that mean a different footprint of the?
Yes, because we kind of taking what we have today, like Century Line, which is closer to the green section, and then expand it to the system we have McCall Victorville. It's not showing there. And then from that point, we want to see collaboration with other utility where they're already developing system and join that route all the way to Nevada where we can have more access. So it's a combination of maximizing existing corridor and collaborating with NV Energy's project that they're working on today so that we can have a direct link from Nevada solar project all the way home.
Okay, so this is a combination of increasing the current lines as well as a new ones, okay.
But it's a new concept in a way that if we do that successfully, we have to basically take the existing Century line, convert it into a DC system, and decouple it from the Victor LA path I described earlier, and then have a new link that takes it all the way to Nevada. So that's why it's kind of new, but we're using existing right away to minimize time and then tap into Nevada system.
Okay.
The second one is a brand new concept. We go all the way to the east, tapping into Arizona and New Mexico. That one, if we do that, we can bring a new line, 500 kV preferably, and bring it to DWP. But we recognize that SC is heavily in that sector. Collaboration with them will also be beneficial so that we can come together and bring it in basin, and each one of it can separate our route. SC can go to their system, we can stay in our system. So we're thinking about potential collaboration for this one. If successful, it will increase the import capability to LA Basin. 3, this one we're not recommending for upgrade.
I'm sorry, could we go to the last one again?
Sure.
Does this this doesn't go as far as Imperial, so this wouldn't give you geothermal?
Yes, we have a possibility to get to geothermal because of the geothermal is a key piece. And then you will see where it terminates. You see the 2 leg by the coastal area. If it terminates there, we have a new project. How do we take that from there and bring it in basin? Coming up in project number 4 or 5.
Okay.
This one is not a new project. I think we talked about it earlier. That's what is yellow. We just want to recognize that how do we work with Bonneville Power Administration on the northern side of the Pacific DC Intertie to see to what extent we can build more transmissions so we can connect the PDCI to resources, thereby fully utilizing the PDCI. This one will not add new capacity, but it would merely utilize PDCI to the max. The next one, remember earlier I talked about Barren Ridge path is saturated and we cannot afford to lose it. How do we diversify the path? Because we have a lot of potential in that area. So again, this one can be collaboration with SCE because they also have a lot of resources there that they want to bring home and build a new system outside of that corridor, Barren Ridge path, and bring it in basin. Now, submarine cables. You see the 2 points that we have there, connecting the submarine cable so that we can have resource coming from Imperial Valley and connecting them and bringing them back from the submarine DC system back to LA system, and also thinking about San Luis Obispo area, bringing resource from that area and connect it back to DDP system. So that's a submarine cable, and if offshore wind is a viable option, we will use those cables to connect to offshore wind as well. The 6th project, we're thinking about the STS. How do we increase the STS system? At least adding 700 megawatt of capacity out of the 24 that is existing today. This is for strategic region so that we have enough capacity. Again, if anything happened to our system, we get to bring more resource from that area. So SCS is also something we are thinking about, to what extent it's beneficial to the plan. Now, if you look at this collectively, you remember the 3 items that I asked you to think about. Geographic diversity, it works. Second, more corridor to increase operational flexibility. Yes, we have more corridors. And third, once the developers see that this is the future, they know where the resource, they know where they have to put the resource because we already planned where the resources are. All they got to do, apply for interconnection on those lines, and we will process them accordingly. So this is, in general, the plan that we're trying to study today to see to what extent, if we study that properly, which project will survive, which one makes sense. That's something we will talk about at some point in the future. But one thing I want to stress, we do not have a lot of time, unfortunately. When I go to those meetings with other utilities, they look at me like, Dennis, are you going to make it? You guys are 2035. I say, I know. That's why we come here to you all. How can we move expeditiously? We cannot disrupt the city of Los Angeles. We have to be creative about it. So working with other utilities is key. So we also have to be strategic. This is the reason why this is strategic. It's outside of the norm of the current process that P. Joy described earlier. This process is merely augmenting that process so that we get to go to 100% earlier on time. Lastly, I know that the department is open to collaboration. How do I know? I look at history. PDCI was built through collaboration. Hoover collaboration. STS through collaboration, Mida Adelanto through collaboration. I don't know why we couldn't do it again. So that's why we believe that through collaboration, we can accelerate the delivery of those transmission systems, increase the geographic diversity, resiliency, and more important, DWP is a great operating agent. We know how to operate the DC system. We are the only one in the Western grid that 2 DC link. We have experience, so we can do this. And mitigation of financial risk, because if we collaborate with others, we hedge against those risks I talked about together. Now, we're working with also Department of Energy today, who's also recognized that we need more transmission. And we want to see to what extent their project, if they found one, can be helpful to the DWP. So we are participating with their study as well. We collaborate with other utilities like CAISO, NV Energy, Pacific Core, Idaho Power, just to discuss how we can work together to make those plans feasible, because they too have their own goal to get to.
Is there something, the prior slide suggests that there's some impediment to collaboration with other entities?
No, we felt like collaboration is the best approach to our plan because there is value gain. Sometimes collaboration is not practical because of the way we are structured. We are municipal, some people can be for profit. But for this group that we are working on, take into consideration their need and our need, because we share common value, collaboration makes sense. Example, the state of Nevada, 80% of the land is owned by the federal government. Think about it for a minute. They don't have state permitting, they only have federal permitting. Transmission construction is 5 to 6 years. In California, it's 15. You follow me? If we, through collaboration, if we build a project there together, it can expedite that process, gain time, and go to the DWP system. So that's the way we're thinking about those things. We will use collaboration where it makes sense to advance our mission to reach 100% by 2035.
Okay, thank you.
Next step, we will complete the study in September 2022. We're almost done. That's what I want to share with you, a little bit of flavor, what we're thinking about. And we will have a solid list of recommended projects, and we're also going to show you the cost. It's important to understand the cost. Our plan is in alignment with SLTRP. They will come to you at some point in September as well. We will identify potential collaboration and partnership. We're discussing, we're in discussion, working with them. Whichever work, we will tell you this is the one that works. What say you? And lastly, our next board presentation is slated for October 2022. That will conclude my presentation.
Questions or comments? So I have a couple of comments. Nothing, Jill? You're good? All right.
I'm sorry, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Can you remind us of your name? You said it earlier and then it slipped my mind.
Excuse me?
Can you tell us your name again?
Oh, Dennis Obiang.
Dennis, thank you. Thank you, Dennis. Go ahead.
I would first want to say that this was an exceptional presentation. So my compliments to Simon and your group and to both presenters. This was very, very well done. If we weren't wearing masks, you would have seen, I think, looks of pride at various portions of your presentation. Not only is the information delivered in a way that is easily understood by, by people without your level of expertise. But it's also really, from my perspective, extraordinary to see what our future leadership looks like at this department. It's really quite something. And so I just was somewhat overwhelmed by that. It may have been spurred a little bit by the conversation that I had earlier today with Priscilla Hawshaw, who was sitting in for Joe Brejevich. If Marty had simply been absent today and given Reiko the gavel, we would have had an all-female leadership team up here. But, one guy's okay.
I can step up.
As Priscilla shared her story of being the proud daughter of Cuban immigrants, it was just, we had a very robust conversation about all of the amazing members of the human diaspora that make up this city and this department, and seeing it on display, sitting in this building, thinking about the history of this department, it's just really quite something. So I did want to make that observation just because it was on my mind. Also, this is DWP from my perspective at its best. I think Nicole quite properly pointed to the ambitious nature of what you are suggesting that we can accomplish or will need to accomplish in order to implement LA 100. We keep talking about 2035, which is, tomorrow practically. And we're looking at achievements, at construction, at projects that we know take substantially longer than that historically. And yet, in order to do remarkable things, you have to have the capacity to push beyond what you believe is possible, to actually achieve what, until you do it, seems impossible. And at the Department of Water and Power, it seems only fitting that we be in that pursuit at this moment, faced with this challenge, the challenge of both climate change and also its impacts both on how we use our energy, but its impacts on water. Because the city of Los Angeles exists, because in another time, this department's predecessors were able to push beyond the possible to reach for what at that moment seemed impossible. So while every time you make one of these presentations and I look at it and we're in the planning stage, we're thinking about how we're going to pull it all together, there's that that part of me that says, are you kidding? And that wants to bear down on but how can you do this? And wants to look at at the history of how these things occur and gets a little daunted at what can realistically be done. That always shows up for me. But I am frankly quite impressed and inspired by what this work represents, which is a willingness to embrace the possibility that we can do more than we believe we can do. And that if we just keep our heads down and keep working and keep planning and keep collaborating, that there may be a way, that there will be a way. And so I just want to recognize that in the planning that is taking place and in all of the significant work that's being done all over the department to not just prepare us for the future, but to deliver the future. So thank you. I look forward to the presentation in October. I look forward to seeing all of this come together. There wasn't a specific request, although there was I think a acknowledgement that doing this work will require a great deal of collaboration, and I would suspect that in underscoring that, you are seeking to prepare this body for an openness to the flexibility that collaboration may require. And I see Dr. Pickle nodding his head. And I do want to acknowledge that we hear you on that score, and certainly I concur that the future will require collaboration and flexibility and a willingness to think about things differently. And want to have you be encouraged as you continue your thoughtfulness and your planning around these issues to incorporate that into your work. So thank you both. And Simon, Reiko, quite an excellent team. Dr. Pickle.
I've been around various aspects of transmission development or the need for transmission for 40 years, and this was professionally impressive.
Well, with that, thank you, and I'd like to take a brief recess. I know we have another presentation, but I need a break. So, exercising the prerogative of the chair, if we could recess for 15 minutes, that would be terrific. And we will not have a closed session today. So we will be, I think, done with the meeting in a pretty expedited fashion after that. So thank you. We'll in recess for 15 minutes.
Cynthia, one of the minutes.
Yeah, I got that.
You know that, okay.
This meeting is being recorded.
Pause it. Stand by, please. Okay, Jeff, go on the record button.
Take the vote. President McCLAIN-HILL. Present. Commissioner BARAD Hopkins.
Good?
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Okay, thanks, man. Present. Yeah, that's
3 present and a quorum.
This meeting is being recorded.
Terrific. So we have one final management report to the filed items. Oh, do we have 2? Am I missing one? Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. We do have another report. Camry.
David has to make the
David,
report.
of course.
Yeah.
We haven't seen you in a while, David.
It's been a while, especially in person.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see everybody. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Board President. Okay, so this will be an update on the Comprehensive Affordable Multifamily Retrofits Program, which targets affordable multifamily properties, income qualified, low-income folks, for comprehensive energy efficiency, electrification, and on-site solar retrofits. I'll give a really quick background on the program, just as a refresher, before I move into the results to date. But I do want to open with being very happy to announce the program is active. The program launched on May 1st, so it's been active a month, and we actually have some pretty interesting results that I'll be showing you here in a bit. Okay, so a little bit of background on the program and what it does. Oh, hang on, that jumped up. Sorry about that. Okay, we lost a slide, but that's okay. The slide we lost is just laying out that the program is designed to assist. It's designed to do a bunch of things, actually. It's a complicated program, but it's also comprehensive. It's meant to help the property owners, the affordable property owners, as well as the tenants, achieve deep carbonization of their buildings and their facilities, and energy savings, of course, bill savings, while also supporting living wage jobs for the local workforce, for the regional workforce and those professional development opportunities, which is a really key facet of the program. And I'll explain a little bit more how we accomplish that in the program. And to help those properties achieve those savings and those decarbonization targets, there's very robust incentives that we put in place. The program's based on California's simplified version of this. I say California's simplified version, but actually LA's is the complicated version of the state's program, because the state's program has been around for a good 15, 20 years. We added some features to it. The state's program is called the Low Income Weatherization Program, but it does more than just weatherization. Very briefly, the funding structure for this program, we've allocated $92 million over 5 years, of which $75 million is directly for the incentives and rebates paid by LADWP to customers. So at the end of the 5 years, if we spent the full $92 million, $75 million of that will have been for customer rebates straight into the project owner developer pockets, and of course getting those savings down to the tenants. We hired the Association for Energy Affordability, which is a national firm that implements a lot of these types of programs. They implement the state's weatherization program mentioned there. Our contract with them is $17 million over the 5 years, so about $3.5 million a year. And they provide the technical and professional services. They have also hired a sub that is CHPC, that's the California Housing Partnership. to help with finding us projects and recruiting those projects, establishing eligibility, and making sure that we're keeping a robust pipeline at all times. They've actually been around 34 years. They're a semi-state agency. They were chartered and spun off by the legislature in 1988 as a nonprofit, specifically to focus on affordable housing. So AEA, the professional services contractor, and CHPC, which you can think of as the recruitment contractor, they work directly with customers and the customers' own workforces and contractors that they hire to develop each project. And when I say develop, these are customized projects. These aren't refrigerator swap outs or window AC swap outs. These are engineered projects where the building is assessed on all manner of its energy use and for the opportunities for efficiency, electrification, and on-site solar. And so there's a lot that goes into developing the projects. Our role as DWP is to review and approve these projects at every step of the way. So we won't let a project go too far down a pathway without having seen it and checked the milestone. And we also, and this is really important, this program is built to coordinate with other programs that DWP offers, like the Home Energy Improvement Program, which is our own low-income direct install program run with DWP forces. Those are free measures. And so our folks will be coordinating with that, basically to give them the free measures first before they get into looking at measures that they would be getting rebates for through this program, through CAMR. We committed to hire quite a bit of staff for this program, and most of that hiring is complete. So we are staffed up. So we had the launch on May 1, and we are pretty much completely staffed up to be able to resource the program appropriately. Okay, so that's enough background. Let's take a look at what results we're seeing now. And I'm going to do a drill down here. This is the high level. We have 1,446 individual units that have signed up for the program, and that represents 15 projects. And I'll give you more detail on all of that here in a bit, but I just wanted to kind of convey the magnitude of what we've already seen in terms of interest and participation. We have 2,744 units that represent 43 projects that are in discussion and negotiation about signing up for the program. They're learning about it, they're interested. We've got the engagement going back and forth between them and AEA and California Housing Partnership, and we're trying to move those towards officially signing up. And then beyond that, we've got another 40 projects representing 1,742 units that are leads that we've identified as likely candidates, or good candidates, perhaps. And we've done the outreach with them, but we're not necessarily in active discussion with them so far. But I think so that's the big picture of the program's activity so far in terms of getting projects into it and into the pipeline. But let's take a look at some detail on where they're at. I have maps for this, so we don't have to read the line. I just wanted to give you a sense of the types of, the project names, number of units. That's an important thing. Anybody from 5 units on up can participate in the program. And so you see a good spread there. Number 3 is a 5-unit project. Number 5 is a 1,093 unit project that happens to be Angeles Plaza. Beyond that, it pretty much runs 20, 30, 40 units per project. So these have all signed up, and we're moving them into the assessment phase where we can scope out what their projects are and then advance the projects from there into design, costing, development, et cetera. And this is the outreach, the active outreach with the 43 properties that represent the 2,774 units that are in conversation and considering signing up for the program. But let's look at maps. Maps kind of bring this home a little bit better. This is a visual depiction of the projects that I just described throughout the city. So this is the projects that have actually signed up into the program, the ones that we're trying to sell on joining the program, and the ones we've identified as good candidates to join the program that we've done outreach with. And the point that we're really trying to convey here is a couple of things. You know, there's a lot of active projects that we're pursuing at various stages, and they're all over the city, but they're all over the city in the places that we wanted to target. Remember, this is affordable multifamily, and we specifically set out to target disadvantaged communities. And so you see a lot of projects in South LA, Central LA, downtown, some in the East Valley, northeast Los Angeles, and San Pedro and Harbor Gateway. So we're really pleased that, and remember, the program launched May 1st, so this is a month's worth of outreach activity. And then just to zoom in a little closer to Central LA and downtown, you can see, you know, just a little bit higher resolution scattering of how the projects are located. You see the big one in downtown, which is Angeles Plaza, and we also track these by district. Council districts are always very interested to know what activity is happening in their districts.
Is that the project? Is that are they located like right next to the Omni Hotel? Is that what I'm thinking about?
It's the big 3-building complex right over here on Hill. It's right kind of catty corner to the, or Olive.
Olive, yes.
Olive, yeah, Olive. Yeah, catty corner to the Omni Hotel.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a very large senior housing.
That's what I thought. It's a senior housing unit, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by customize?
So what customize means is we engineer these projects, meaning we're not just swapping light bulbs out. We're not just swapping out a refrigerator. We go in and take a look at the building. We look at the age of the building, what kind of insulation it has, what kind of windows it has, what kind of lighting it has, what kind of air conditioning system it has, water heating, appliances in the units, the full gamut of all the energy consuming devices within it. And then we can look at what the current state of the art is, and we can see where they are in terms of the efficiency levels of the existing equipment they have. And then we can propose measures on things to upgrade, how to upgrade them. That's the first thing, that's energy efficiency. But we're also looking at a big goal of this program is building electrification in low-income multifamily. So we then look at, well, what's their central boiler system look like? Can they, will they, do they have the ability, do they have the room, do they have the service capacity to switch to a high-efficiency electric boiler system? If they have steam heating, can we move them to a high-efficiency heat pump type of application? But those wind up being central systems that have to be, and I say engineered. What that means is, you know, it has to be calculated. It winds up being customized to the specific project based on the opportunity and the equipment that's present on that particular project.
Are they going to be allowed to have gas stoves?
Yes. Electrification is not mandatory, but we're trying to provide the resources if they're willing, and we're trying to encourage them to do it. And the incentives are structured around electrification. It's not a requirement of the program, but they're strongly encouraged, and we would like to see as much of that as possible.
And is it for seniors most?
No. That particular project that the board president mentioned, Angeles Plaza, is a senior housing project. But no, it's for low-income folks, whatever their working circumstances are.
And the whole goal of the project overall is to get to the building owners that don't have the incentives or means to make the improvements that would then translate into more efficiencies for the folks who live there. And so it's to bridge that gap so we can have a series of efficiency programs that of course drive costs down, drive costs of living down, and by engaging these folks through this program, which helps offer customized solutions for each building and also provides that engineering and technical support.
Mm-hmm. And quickly back on this slide, by the way, we did add this slide at the last minute. We weren't able to get it in the original presentation, but I thought it was important to show the sweep of the activity throughout the city and where it's, where we're targeting. But these various areas of the city have different housing types. So Angeles Plaza is a high-rise, high-density project, but that's not all we're focused on. When you get out into the valley, when you get out down into San Pedro and some of Harbor Gateway and other areas, it's smaller buildings. Like I said, 5 units and up qualifies, and we want to be targeting those small mom-and-pop buildings. Just like we get the big projects, we want to get the small projects too. And that's been a historical shortfall of a lot of our efforts. It's easy to go after the big guys, right? It's hard to get to the plethora of smaller projects. And so that's a heavy focus of this program, is to be really inclusive across the gamut of project sizes. Okay, there's a lot here. I can go into as little or as much detail on it, but extensive outreach has gone into this program and continues in terms of collaboration. Active partnerships we have with SCAMP, the Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing. They're a big player. Enterprise Community Partners is a nationwide nonprofit promoting affordable housing. And there's others. And the way that looks in terms of participation is we do co-marketing efforts. We work with their conferences. We do co-webinars, newsletters, and we've developed quite a bit of success in terms of building those relationships in a short amount of time. I'll summarize that here in a bit. Let's see. We have our community grant partners. That's a great program. We have about 25 individual grantees, nonprofits that work throughout the city, citywide, as well as at the council district level. And they are aware of the program and help us find projects as well to reach out to. Leveraging the industry networks, CHPC, the California Housing Partnership, has a lot of relationships, again, because they've been doing this for over 30 years in the state. And I can go down the list, but you can see that, it's very, we've through the stakeholder engagement process, the quite lengthy stakeholder engagement process through which we developed this program in the first place, we identified a lot of potential channels to find interest and to assist us with helping these customers make it into the program.
So just quickly, I'm looking at your active outreach slide again, and you said you've got 2,700 units in active outreach, another 1,700 units pending outreach. Do you know how many, with respect to, let's say, that 2,700, or I guess it's, how much of that roughly 4,500 units you're looking at represent the more moderate size or smaller building target, or are there other mega projects? Because it's interesting, it looks one way when we say we've got 1,400 units. Mm-hmm. And then you look at the detail associated with it, and 1,000 of those are in one, mega project downtown LA.
Right.
So I'm just curious about your upcoming sort of outreach, and if that looks different.
Yeah, and I apologize, I glossed over that on the active outreach slide where we list those 43 properties.
I see.
There you can see that there's a few in the hundreds. There's a lot in the 12, 16, 26, 49. 60 range.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
What does a 48-unit building look like? Is that a 3-year store four-story apartment building, or how big is a building like that typically?
Most of these are going to be 2 to 3 story, unless they get up around 80 units, and then you're starting to see the 4-story ones. So if it's a 5 to 20, it's probably a 2-story, the long bread box style. And once they get into the 30 or 40 range and 60, now you're starting to get those block square ones. And that's a function of when they were built because of the parking requirements. With the old stock, there were no parking requirements. But once they got parking minimums because of the congestion in the 50s, they had to start building block size to be able to meet the parking requirements.
Okay. Practical.
Okay, get rid of that. This is just a sample highlights of some of the outreach. We were able to get a number of outreach activities started before the official launch. I think that's why we were able to have a pretty robust pipeline going into the first month. This obviously will be a work in progress in terms of keeping those statistics about participation that I just showed you up to date, because we're now halfway into month 2, and I would imagine by the end, when this month's over, July 1, we'll have 2 months of history. And the first thing we're going to do is cross-correlate that back to month 1 and see what the trends are, see how much has moved out of pending into active, et cetera. So we'll start to see that flow through the pipeline. At this point, we're establishing pipeline and of course, active projects. But by next month, we'll see those projects coming out of discussion into commitment, and then we'll see the projects that are committed moving into project scoping, incentive determination, hiring contractors, doing the work, verifying the work, and then ultimately paying out the rebates. But because these are customized projects, a relatively long life cycle. They can be, depending on the size of the project. I mean, the Angeles Plaza project, depending on what they do, could be a couple of years. But a 5-unit building or a 20-unit building will be a month, couple months, 3 months. So we'll learn that as we get deeper into the program.
What do the landlords think about this?
Landlord, so the way we're targeting it, these aren't market rate units, right? So these property owners and affordable housing developers, technically they're landlord, but they're already in the affordable housing space. So they're usually nonprofits themselves, unless it's a really small mom and pop type. And so they are very eager to find assistance to do programs like this, because this can help them do infrastructure upgrades that they can't otherwise afford. They may have an old boiler that's been there since the building was built, and the central boiler serves all the units. That's on its last legs. And they don't have the money to replace it necessarily, but if they can get into this program and there's sufficient support through the electrification, through the decarbonization incentives, which we've made robust, and they may be, and will help them with all this analysis, they may be able to do things they couldn't otherwise do. So the interest level from the types of property owners and managers we'll be working with and are working with this program is very high.
Good.
Very wordy slide. I apologize for that, but I did want to stress this one. So something that came up in the board meeting late last year when we approved when you approved the AEA contract in the first place, the stakeholders had some questions about, well, they're low income now, they're affordable housing now, and we're going to invest all this money in these projects. How do we assure that they maintain that commitment to be low income? At the time, we really didn't have an answer, but we said we'd take it under advisement and think about it. Our partner CHPC, again, has tons of expertise in this area, and we work with them to develop terms and conditions that we have inserted into the project, the application process. And essentially, we've put a condition on participating projects and owners that they must maintain the program eligibility requirements that are at least 66% of households earning at or below 80% of area median income for 10 years after the incentive payment. That's a pretty robust requirement that is designed to make sure that they're not getting gentrified out. We don't want to invest all this money in low-income multifamily property only to have the owner next year try to flip it to condos. So we built, and this is pretty much the T's and C's verbatim, but you get the idea that we wanted something to ensure that gentrification aspect wasn't going to happen on these particular projects because they're so important to maintain the affordable housing stock. We also, and this is a key one as well, we require the participants to notify my program staff no less than 30 days if they're going to sell the property to somebody else. Because that does happen. It happens frequently that a portfolio owner or holder will trade assets, will sell one. But we want to know because we want to make sure it stays affordable. And we're working with other city departments to develop the processes for that. For example, LA Housing Department, which has an enforcement role in some of that, so that we can make sure things aren't slipping through the cracks. Because the last thing we want is to invest all this in a property, somebody sells it, the buyer converts it to condos, and then those upscale condo owners get the benefit of everything we invested that was supposed to go for affordable housing.
How does homeless fit into this?
I'm sorry, what?
Homeless, how do they fit into this program at all?
So the way homeless services would fit into this is, we're not involved directly in street to homed, but there are agencies that are, and there are a lot of agencies that are working on that. So where they are able to move homeless, and I'll give you an example in a sec, or they're able to get homeless off the street and get them housed in a facility, that building then could potentially participate in this program. And a common example of that is there's a big push, and I think AIDS Healthcare Foundation is really involved in this, trying to buy up disused hotels, motels, the old 1920s, 1930s, 1950s drive-in style motels that are basically being used as transitional housing anyway, and formalize that. Well, so if it's a 50-room motor inn that is now being repurposed into permanent supportive housing for formerly homeless individuals, that becomes a high likelihood candidate for this program.
Any additional questions? Is your presentation concluded? So
that would conclude my presentation, but for questions, just with a little highlight that, we structured the program to sit at the intersection of equity, employment, and environment. And that's our commitment with this program, and we're happy to see it up and running. We'll certainly be monitoring it very carefully and progressing the projects and reporting out regularly as we get a little bit more activity down the road in terms of rebates and energy savings and bill savings information, things like that.
Okay, that's terrific. I actually do have a couple of questions and just some observations. So first, I will be very interested in understanding the metrics that you're using to actually determine sort of what our goals are with respect to equity, environment, and employment. So I know that we often do a very good job of tracking the environmental metric, but not as good a job at looking at metrics with respect to employment and environment. And as this moves forward, I'll have a number of questions about what those two pieces of that puzzle look like. In addition, it's just, to me, it's notable that we are, at that first slide of yours, where you indicated that there are over 400,000 affordable units in Los Angeles. That, it's a pretty big number. Right now, all told, we're looking at about 1% in terms of what we are impacting, basically, based on where we are now. I am curious as to what it is, what our goal is as it relates to how much of this we're trying to impact. It's difficult to determine whether you're succeeding or not without understanding how you're measuring what your success is. I'm also interested in, since we know how many affordable units there are in LA, I'd be interested in understanding where they are, very specifically if we have that data.
Okay.
So that we can, because, sometimes it's not that you're looking for an even distribution, you actually want to see that you're making impact, in the areas where, where you have the richest, most fertile opportunity. So I'm very interested in understanding that as well.
Okay.
I know that we had a lot of interest in getting this program moving, so I'm extremely happy that it is moving. I know that our previous board vice president was extremely interested in seeing it not only move forward, but accelerate. But, we've had, a number of our nonprofit partners come in, and as they were looking at things that we could do and that they were seeking to see this department support that they thought would significantly advance all of our goals. This was one of the programs that was highlighted. And we budgeted to the tune of, as you pointed out, $95 million, which is not, chump change, but probably not all that we can do. But to do more and to keep going, I think it becomes really critical that we start to think about these strategies not as one-off interventions, but how we are layering our activity on top of other activity to actually produce an impact. So there's the stuff we do, which is great. What is the impact of that? Because that's the ultimate accountability that we have to have to our to our neighbors and who are our customers and who pay the bills around here. So I'm going to have lots of interest in this and other work, and seeing us begin to think about, Marty, how we assess our work as a collective enterprise as opposed to an individual set of initiatives that are measured one in siloed against the other. So that is my initial feedback, but congratulations on getting this moving. And I know that that HYPE is also operating now. Is that correct, Mr. Wilbur?
I'm sorry?
Is the HYPE program up and going?
The HYPE program, it is
Yes.
up and going. I'm sorry, right now they did have some issues where they're gonna go through some additional training on hazardous material abatements and things like that. So there's no projects going forward right now, but we're hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll be back up again, moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's just very, very, pressing in my own head is that, and it happens all the time, we have every good intention and we create lots of programs and lots of initiatives and lots of things. And those programs are, whether they are actually benefiting the intended recipient, are producing benefits to lots of other people. And I'm very sensitive to, and want us to maintain a sense of urgency so that we see the maximum benefit to the end user, as opposed to, the chain of folks in the process of getting these things up and going. So, again, we'll be looking forward to additional conversation and to seeing how these pieces are impacting, neighborhoods with our collective resources focused and seeing what, that looks like as we move forward. So thank you for this. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
I'm interested to know how close these projects are to schools.
We have all these projects located on a geographic informational system. That's the basis of data for the map I showed, which is a way of saying I don't know offhand, but we can we can find it very easily. That's a data point we can pull very easily.
But they'll all be improvements to existing buildings. So yeah.
And you know, and I will let you go with this, that because we've discussed our growing interest in not just insulation from the perspective of, blocking out cold and that sort of thing, but also and weatherization, because we talk about weatherization, gosh, I can't say that word, all the time, but we rarely talk about, at least in the past, we've not spent much time in the context, thinking about that from the context of actual extreme heat. And so I will be interested in understanding, as we do this work, how we also are evaluating our ability to mitigate and to create more resilience as it relates to heat, in addition to electrification and insulation and dealing with other elements. So, and we'll be talking about extreme heat more at the next board meeting, but I just wanted to put a marker out there for this.
Yeah, and this program does serve air conditioning as well, so that's very much a key function, key area of interest.
Thank you, sir.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Board President. Thank you, Commission.
And now the final presentation, sorry. An update on security services.
Commissioners, Board President, thank you very much for having me back. I appreciate your time to give us to provide you this update. I wanted to start with our hiring. We are currently working on our transfer list and our open certification list at the same time. On the transfer list, we had 41 tentative job offers. 33 are continued to background, so we had 8 decline the offer. We had an additional 1 person drop out as a result of his background, which was found to be inadequate for us to hire due to some domestic violence issues. On the open certification list, we will flex that list upward as we lose folks to the transfer list, if we should lose any more, to try to make up for those people. We just concluded interviews from our open certification list. It actually says June 17th, but actually today was the last day for interviews. We interviewed 39 folks, so their scores are being calculated, and as information flowed to me from our people who conducted the interviews, we had some very good people, and so I'm hoping to have a high number from that open certification list that will eventually go into background, and hopefully those will lead to job offers. To increase the speed at which we can do our hiring, since the last time we met, we brought our backgrounds in-house. We have 7 or 8 investigators that work for us that have background experience before they were hired with us. So they didn't need any training. They had the expertise to do that. So we have given them our backgrounds, and our estimation is that we're saving anywhere between 3 and 6 months in our hiring process to bring them on board. We have modified our background process to focus on the true things that we need to make job offers. There are 4 items that I thought were highly critical that we do. We obviously want to check their personnel file from where they're working today. We wanted to check their references that they list. We wanted to do their neighborhood checks, and obviously a criminal check so they're cleared to work for us at our SIP sites and other locations that we find particularly vulnerable to crime element and other items that we would want someone to be crime-free, if you if you understand where, where I'm going with that. So we have made, I think, the security staff has made significant progress since the last time we met in getting our staffing up to par.
What's a neighborhood check?
I'm sorry?
A neighborhood check. You said we do neighborhood checks?
We go to their place of residence where they live, and we knock on their neighbors' doors to see if they have had any contact with them or if they've had any interaction with them. We find out some things that are very positive about the applicants, and sometimes that can be very negative. We don't do any decision-making on...
Like an FBI background check, we actually go to people and start asking questions about, do you know this guy? And, you know, do they show up here? Do we do that for any other employees of the department?
Not, just for our security group. We find it to be very positive on many ends and sometimes negative, and then we will always ask.
I guess I'm just curious, is that only because I know that we have, you know, people in very sensitive positions at the department, and it just seems
well, with the idea that a security officer has the keys to the castle, and
we have other people at the department that have the keys to the castle as well. When I say we have people in very sensitive positions, and we have people in this department in very sensitive positions, and with the ability, frankly, to wreak more havoc than a security guard. So I was just curious as to the level of the review.
Okay.
Can you remind me of the guards armed?
I'm sorry?
They're not armed.
They are not armed. Yeah. So in order to keep up the pace that we are at today, we had asked in this last budget cycle and received the following positions that we will be able to hire beginning July 1st. Most of these classifications have lists that exist now, so we'll be able to fill these positions very rapidly. This is the support element that security needs to support its 350 employees. And so I think that this will process our, if anything has been lacking on our side in terms of speed and turnaround, this will completely, I believe, eliminate that, and we will be able to process our people through the personnel process and for city personnel process much quicker.
So could you tell me how those specific positions relate to what they relate to moving people through personnel?
So some of these positions, particularly the management analyst positions, will concentrate on ensuring that security officers, current security officers go through training, for example, and to track their training, and because their training must be maintained every 24 months, and then incoming training. So right now we have someone who is not only doing that, but many other tasks that are needed to support the uniform group that we have. We have people who are doing multiple tasks and hiring. We will now be able to turn a singular task of hiring over maybe to one management analyst. And again, if they're only doing one element of that support, then they'll be able to do it quicker and become more expert at it and work with personnel on a continual basis.
Okay, that's for the management analyst.
I'm sorry?
That explains the management analyst. There are several other classifications on that slide.
There are. One of them is an upgrade. The utility administrator 3 was a 2 and now is a 3 through an upgrade process that was approved, I believe, by the general manager. And the 2 utility administrators, 1s, they will work for the utility administrator 3 and carry out other functions that we will become more efficient, such as the need for us to create things like a heat map. A heat map would identify where our problems are, where our thefts are, where we can then put resources to those very specific elements. Right now, if you look at the ECC, electric trouble, and then our own reports, we have 3 disparate sources of information that don't commingle and create one report where we know where things are happening. And if I look at those 3 reports and overlay them, there are things missing from all 3 of those reports. I would like to eliminate that process and have one single source that comes into security on a nightly or daily basis, so we can go to our problem areas and know where they are and put security resources to those areas so we would be more efficient and smarter at our jobs. So those are some of the things that we'll be able to do to support the uniform group.
That sounds like that supports operations. It doesn't sound, I'm just trying to understand the impact that these positions would have had on hiring, since that was one of the...
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I think it's just the concentration of spreading out current duties. So there are more people to do the jobs that need to be done. Right now, I am working just with 1 utility administrator and 2 MAs, and they're inundated in their support of 350 people.
Okay, but these jobs aren't, they're not currently taking on responsibilities that are otherwise being handled by security guards, though, right? So they're not increasing capacity at that level.
Right, no. This is probably the recommended amount of support for our entire organization. But this will help facilitate our hiring needs at all levels, whether they be design engineers, electrical engineers that work on our alarms, our lighting, our access control, the hiring and promotion of those people. Whatever we're doing personnel-wise, that this group will help us push those through.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So our overtime update, when we looked very closely at the expenditures we used, they were mostly in uniform that were causing great expenditures for us. So we looked at our shift management, and we have completely eliminated our before shift administrative duties. And we have caused those to be done during the shift and then picked up the next shift for our supervisors and managers. As you know, the BNS, as it's referred to, causes overtime not only before the shift, but then it causes their regular shift to be overtime also. So by eliminating that, we took a large chunk of expenditures from our overtime. We also looked at our after shift management, and we have asked all of those other duties to, again, to be pushed to the next shift the next day, and to wind down their shifts in an appropriate manner to be gone by the end of their shift and not hang over for an hour or two to clean up reports. So we're holding some things, but they don't hurt us in terms of safety and security. So one of the bigger items to save.
Oh, hold on. I think that Jill had a question. You're trying to figure out BNS?
Yeah.
So essentially what he's explaining is that depending on how you assign overtime, and they have, acronyms for everything, but depending on how you assign overtime, it determines the degree to which hours worked will be considered overtime. So if I'm correct, what you're saying is that if you assign that overtime before the shift, not only, so if I ask you to work an hour of overtime before your shift, that not only is that hour overtime, but your regular shift becomes overtime. So now everything, your entire engagement that day gets escalated in pay, correct?
Correct.
And by simply shifting, when I make the assignment, I shift the amount of overtime that's actually being essentially
That's
utilized, correct?
That's correct.
And BNS is just their designation
Payroll
for
code, yeah.
whether they do it before or after the shift.
Before normal shift.
Before normal shift, that's the in, thank you.
Before normal
Yes,
shift.
yes, the in was a little confounding, but yes.
It can be
before
very
normal shift.
challenging in a 24-hour operation, but we have put in place some very sort of rigid rules and measures, and we check on those now on a daily basis to make sure that we are not either purposely or accidentally bringing people in before their shift, causing more overtime on the back end.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
So we looked at our backfills, and we were operating under a very simple function of trying to fill all of them. And I think that is oversimplistic when we're covering over 60 facilities. So I met with management, the chief of security and the director of uniform security. And if you combine their years, it's 40 years working their way through the ranks of every position, and they have worked at nearly every facility. And we came up, first of all, we wanted to include all of the superintendents that were involved and all of the facility managers, which we did. And we came up with 3 areas that we could make decisions on backfilling or not backfilling. And those were employee safety, public safety, and critical infrastructure. And we took those principles, involved the superintendents, and we involved the facility managers.
Tell me exactly what you mean by backfill.
So if everybody shows up to work, there is no need for overtime or backfill. But if one person calls off, then I have to make a decision whether to hire overtime for that person's position or not. So I'm backfilling regular shifts. And that's 3 times a day, obviously. And this was where our greatest expenditures were occurring also. So, like I said, we attacked the shift management, and we looked at backfills very carefully. So here's an example of, and some areas run into 2, critical infrastructure, public safety, and employee safety. So if we look at water filtration, it hits all areas. So we always backfill. We will always staff 100% there. It's too critical of a location for us not to be there. And if we look at the JFB, it hits all those areas too, except on swing shift. Because we are able to lock down gates at a certain time, we can peel off our backfill on swing shift. So we may not fill one gate because we have cameras and alarms and we have gates that close, and we're able to keep people out and be able to watch over safely. We have things like RSX. So we have a receiving station that is providing electricity to LAX, very important. And it's being rebuilt. And as we met with the superintendent over that project is already undergoing delays. So in their laydown yard, they can't afford any more theft or any theft of all the resources that they need to build that on time. So we will always staff that. It's a small yard. We are effective in ensuring that their resources aren't stolen. And so we worked with the facilities. We looked at those principles: employee safety, public safety, critical infrastructure. We created a matrix that every watch commander has, and they all follow the same matrix. And so they know when they should hire, when they should not hire. So the results of that have provided us almost $357,000 in savings just in the month of April. I think this more complex model serves us well, and I think it provides us a great deal of safety for our employees, for citizens, and for our infrastructure. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Good.
No, thank you for your presentation. I don't think I have any questions, although, maybe I do. Maybe less of a question, more of a comment. As you know, I've been particularly interested in the utilization of overtime in security services, primarily because it's been a persistent issue that has remained sort of constant and unaddressed for at least 5 years now. I did note in my further review of just security services in general that while there wasn't any decrease in the utilization of overtime, there was a significant increase in the budgeted provisions for overtime. So rather than addressing the issue by hiring, and there was always a sufficient both authorized amount in terms of hiring. I mean, there were increases as it relates to the number of people that were authorized to be hired, but there was no hiring. In fact, we're at the same level that we were 5 years ago. There was a small uptick, and then it continued to decline. While overtime has remained pretty steady and well beyond what would be considered a normal variance. So I continue to be concerned about how that occurred and why that's occurred on a number of levels. And as a result, from my perspective, in having some initial conversations with our Inspector General, I think this is an area that would be appropriately reviewed for, both as it relates to whatever how did you put it? Whether it was intentional or just, some process issue that has resulted in these continuing over-reliance from my perspective, or continuing reliance and overtime as a sort of standard practice. And also, what they look toward sort of examining that, but also to provide some perhaps insight as to how we can, on a go-forward basis, have more both accountability and better management of these issues. I appreciate your presentation today, and it looks like a lot of the corrective actions are already underway. So I think that will be, it will be nice to see those continue, and also to see those highlighted or better teased out in a report. From the Inspector General. It's a new tool that we have here at the department to look at these issues and to drive accountability, so I appreciate that. It's stunning that in a month we were able to save $350,000, which again, for this department is a drop in the bucket. But when you think about the households and the myriad of needs that our city and its residents have, it's a lot of money, and multiplied by 12, it's a pretty significant savings. And that didn't require, the hiring of one additional person. So, so I'm happy to see it, but I just have to say that it is, it's something that we should be sobered by. In terms of recognizing what could be achieved. I'm also going to be curious as to the background process that includes knocking on people's doors and understanding the degree to which that is something that is required or mandated. I mean, frankly, I have the capacity to do a great deal of both good or damage in the seat that I sit in, and no one knocked on my door. So I'm just very interested in better understanding the necessity for that level of review as it relates to employment at the department. So those are my comments, and I will bring a motion forward at the next board meeting for this board to take up with respect to direction to the Inspector General.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we are now moving to the next item on the agenda, which is the filed items, am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. Are there any questions or comments about any of the filed items?
No, not at this time.
Then we will move to the minutes. And with respect to the minutes, we are able to vote on K2. K1 will need to be deferred until such time as we have the presence of a sufficient number of commissioners who were in attendance at that meeting. So is there a motion for approval of item K2?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Would you call the roll?
President McCLAIN-HILL.
Aye.
Commissioner Barad Hopkins.
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Aye.
Three ayes, motion passes.
Terrific. I think we have the last two items on the agenda, and that would be L3 and 4. And if we could take those items up, I think in tandem, that would be terrific. They're both authored by the FSO, is that right?
That's correct.
Terrific.
So on March 15th, 2016, the council approved the current rate ordinances for water and power that established the base rate revenue targets. And these were for fiscal year 2015 through 2020. If we go to the next slide, you could see that, could they advance okay, this is the power current targets. So for fiscal years 2016 through 2020, the base rate revenue target was written into the ordinance, and it's listed there on the first column to the left. At the end of fiscal year 2019, we had an interim rate review where it was recommended by the Office of Public Accountability to reduce the base rate revenue target by 2% in accordance with the ordinance. And so the base rate ordinance, the base rate revenue target was reduced for fiscal years 19 and 20, as shown in the middle column. And the far column shows those percentage changes. Now the rate ordinance continue in perpetuity until there's a new rate ordinance. So the current rate ordinance has a provision in it that says the base rate revenue target can be increased based on a particular price inflator less 2% productivity. And so when we looked at that for fiscal year 2021, the inflation really wasn't there, so we just maintained the current base rate revenue target. Again, fiscal year 21-22, inflation wasn't there, so the base rate revenue target stayed at the $2,185,000,000. For the proposed budget year, and this was part of our budget presentation, we have seen inflation above 2%. And so in accordance with the current rate ordinance, we're recommending that the board establish a base rate revenue target of $2,229,900,000. And this is a 2.04% increase in the base rate revenue target. Now, the thing about the target is it doesn't increase your bill today as far as how much cents per kilowatt hour you pay, but it actually looks at how much base rate revenue the department collects over a fiscal year. This is the amount we're allowed to collect regardless of how much energy sales we have. So at the end of fiscal year 22-23, June 30th, 23, we will compare how much revenue we were able to bill compared to this target, and we will bring back a motion to the board asking for approval to collect that difference starting January 1st, 2024. And this is the process that will continue to be in place until a new ordinance is established.
If we don't spend it all, or if we don't make it all, we'll bring it back.
If we didn't bill it all, we would ask to collect the difference. If we over collected, energy sales were, through the roof, we give that back to customers. So this is the base rate revenue target, up or down.
So let's assume that so understand how it works. So basically, we will see how we do as it relates to this target. And let's just assume that, people are concerned about the impact of, rising prices everywhere. And they start to conserve. We're asking them to conserve water. They're going to conserve energy as well. Folks are going to tell those kids to turn the lights off. There's just going to be, those measures will be taken to reduce bills, so that we, don't meet our target. I mean, if we're actually thinking about how things are, likely to work, folks are consuming less as inflation goes up. And then the result of that will be the following year will increase their rates in order to, my kind of backfill, in order to backfill or collect what we missed in terms of hitting our target the year before. Is that how that works?
Yes.
And it's collected over a 12-month period.
No, I understand.
Yes.
So we're going to spread it out over, and then that continues in perpetuity, because this is looking at this current inflation or past, it's not taking into account the inflationary cycle that we're in right this second.
No,
which is likely to drive, right, this is back a year, which is likely to drive yet another increase. And we are locked into this scenario as long as we're operating under the existing rate ordinance.
Correct, because the city has had a pattern of not having any good time to do a rate increase. So it creates fiscal pressures on the utility where maintenance gets deferred. And it ends up causing service performance issues. So this was to handle a case we tried very hard not to happen, but the pandemic interceded. We were going to have this review in 2021, starting in December of 2020.
Okay.
Can I chime in real quickly?
Sure, of course.
So one of the key things that happened, and you can both correct me when I butcher this, but one of the key things that happened when we restructured the rates, so everything was volumetric, so all water and power savers are volumetric. And then we know that at the time, we had a lot of water conservation going on. There was dry years then. And there's always the question, is there enough revenue to operate the agency and operate the basics so that we are always able to support our customers? And so there, of course, are pass-through charges on both water and power for different programs. And as sales go down, those pass-throughs, we don't sell that energy or that water, we don't collect that pass-through. But the idea of the rates was, on the customer side, we protected customers by the pass-throughs by saying, we can't over-collect your money and hold on to it. Because if we don't perform our work, we're always doing a look ahead and a look behind so that our pass-throughs match the work we're actually performing for what we said we'd do. The flip side on the department side was called this decoupling, to make sure that because we were all volumetric in our charges, that if we ceased to sell enough water or power, we'd still have enough revenue to maintain the basics of the water and power systems to continue to deliver and not be short of the minimum amount of money we need to operate. So that was the base level, the base level that was provided for in the rates, and we called it, termed as decoupling at the time, was to make sure that aside from the volumetric charges, we always had a minimum amount of operating revenue for both water and power systems to be able to function, even if sales crashed for whatever reasons. That was the rationale behind it at the time. And on the customer side, there were protections that if we didn't perform on our pass-through work, we wouldn't or couldn't collect that revenue. So did I terribly explain that?
There are two things. The decoupling has gone on been in place for over 10 years at this point. Perhaps longer. The addition that occurred this time is we adjusted that base for inflation. but it's inflation less 2%, which is a big gap relative to standards in the industry.
Thank you. I think it's certainly a topic to be continued, and does argue for additional focus on not just rates, but some level of modernization and/or creativity. It feels like a volumetric design total, coupled with this in an inflationary period, could produce some really difficult outcomes for our customer base. And I will be interested in not only some additional review, but also, we're going to have to prepare to communicate about this in a way that can be understood and processed by.
Your instincts are correct. If we have a drop in demand, that adds to that 2%. So if sales are less than that dollar amount by 4%, the impact would be a total of 6%. So there's that challenge.
Okay, well, it's 1:30 in the afternoon, so.
One more thing.
Yes, sir.
It also means this stable income component does support lower or a better credit rating, and there are savings in interest costs or debt costs from that.
Well, and this money funds the increase in base rate costs that the department will incur in fiscal year 22-23. That, we anticipate there will be some cost of living adjustment for our coworkers, plus there will be some increases in material costs. And I have Lisa Yin, the Director of Rates and Financial Planning. I don't know if you could tell us how much that estimate is going to cost on a cents per kilowatt hour basis, or the increase as far as our financial plan?
Oh, yeah, sure. So one thing I just really want to add it as well, the reason, like Dr. Pico just mentioned, so we're basically end of the year. So the target we're asking for today is really for the next fiscal year. By next fiscal year, we're going to come back and look at it, how much revenue we actually collected for the base rate compared to the target you approved today. And then we basically, if there's a shortfall, then we give back, like Nancy gave back to customers. If there's there's a shortfall, we basically collect from the customers. But if we collect too much, then we give back to them. The collection, basically how we do it is basically go back to you again in January by a rate, by base rate revenue target adjustment. That's the way we're going to use the rate to collect from the customers for the following, calendar year. The sales we're looking here is based on the power side. We're basically looking, based on our latest financial plan, we're looking the sales actually going down. So on the power side, on the water side, based on latest projection, the same thing. So we're looking the sales actually is also going down as well. But on the sales, on the water sales, we're still working with water system to get latest forecast. But on the power side, we can see that.
So I just want to be clear, when you say the sales are going down, are you saying that we're forecasting, even as we sit here, reduction in sales on power and water? I mean, I assume we're trying to drive a reduction in sales on water.
We proactively have conservation measures to help reduce sales, but overall, this was what helped keep us whole and still have that conservation signal. If the board does approve this today, this will be used in our planning criteria, but we wouldn't adjust rates in January 24 until we came back to you for your approval, so you know the difference.
No, that part I understand, and I'm not planning to not vote for the item. I guess I'm not comforted by the kick it down the can down the road aspect of this. So I know you keep telling me, well, they won't know for another year, or they won't feel it for another year. That doesn't really address the anxiety that I have around this. It just, it just is a very tangible illustration of the conundrum associated with our various, with our plans and our objectives around both energy and water conservation, and without reference to energy conservation, as we're pushing electrification, again, we are also engaged at the same time in efforts that will reduce reliance on power as one of our critical strategies. So there is clearly tension between that and a cost structure that requires that we cover the expenses through sales of water and power. Because as we, especially in an inflationary environment, but in any environment. So this is just a very, it's a sobering reflection of what's happening and what is to come, and the need for us to not only grapple with it, but not just us, for us to communicate even more broadly and clearly about it as we look to address these issues moving forward. And certainly I know that Commissioner NEEMAN Brady bottom lined it in her very first question, which was, and when is the rate case going to take place? Which underscores the difference between, a green energy entrepreneur and a lawyer. Much fewer words on that side of the dais. So with that, I don't have any additional questions. Is there anyone else that has any question about this? Anything else that y'all would like to offer?
No, ma'am.
All right, then can I have a motion? May we take those, can we take them up together, items
Yes.
3 and 4? Terrific, of course we can. So let me just move that we pass items L3 and L4 at this time.
So moved.
Okay, then I'll second. Would you call the roll, please?
President McCLAIN-HILL,
Aye.
Commissioner Barad Hopkins,
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Aye.
3 ayes, motion's passed.
Terrific. Unless I'm missing something, I think that concludes the meeting for today. Then we stand adjourned. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Over the line.
This guy really